So my name is Lynn Kennedy, and I'm actually on the board of the Senate. And I'm also the local Industrial Agency founder. And we're really wanting to welcome all of you to our property and really thank you for the time to be part of our. I did want to talk a little bit about the Senate. The Senate is the largest Canadian professional membership organization in North America. And our mission is to provide workplace and societal and elevating all Asian and Pacific Islanders, business leaders, and empowering them from a so for Senate reached over 60,000 people in 45 chapters and basically Canada, major educational institutions. Then offers fantastic career life cycle and networks across the community and engagement with education, business professionals, and students, corporate partners, and the community at large. A center for members of various professions, industries, and designed to develop business leaders at all career stages. Business professionals who also consider career informing and educating the broader community outside of the Senate and private schools, societal and fact-based research. Today, I'd really like to introduce our three guest speakers. We've got May Yu. Okay, May Yu, right in front of. Yeah, all right. She is an audit leader, audit partner and lawyer. Jay Evans, Oracle Executive VP and Chief Information Officer, and our moderator today is Steve Boudreau. Sorry. He is the Managing Director at JP Morgan Chase. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our speakers. Thank you. Great.
Well, hello everyone. Delighted to be here today. And I heard there was like an Apple conference this morning. So we got to live up to that energy. And, hopefully you get more out of this session than the few announcements that I couldn't be more excited to be amongst two phenomenal leaders that I've had a chance to kind of get to know more recently as well. You know, Jay, when I can think about you, and you leverage both sponsors and mentors to navigate across companies as well, starting at local levels, and spending the last couple of years in your role. And I know we talked.
Elevate.
Okay.
All right.
I'm gonna really need that wine now.
Yeah. Seriously. Take a shot.
Oh, no mics. Oh.
Oh.
Okay. All right. So yeah, no, just again, your role has expanded drastically, and we talked about just the emergence of large language models and the emergence of data as well. So excited to learn about some of your perspectives, and equally, May as well. You spent 20 years, at and I know you tapped into a lot of those, sponsors and mentors here. So as we kick things off, Jay, I'll go to in terms of our first question as well. And so, can you share just like a pivotal moment in your career journey where you've leveraged a sponsor or a mentor, and how have they played like a crucial role in your growth?
I'm a little bothered. Sorry, when I'm looking out, like I feel like that table's so high that some of the people back there can't see. Do you think we should just move that I just feel bad for the people back there. Just thinking of y'all back there. Is that okay? All right. I was just like looking out and I'm like, I feel bothered. We just
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, Wynn. I just looking out. Sorry. Okay.
My wife.
I was like, this is, I can't see half the people over there, and they
Yeah.
can't. Okay. Sorry, it just felt a little bit. Okay. Cool. Better over there. You can see. can get started.
I think we tricked you all to
I
figure out
know.
a way to have you all
Yeah.
participate and be part of the discussion.
Pop quiz, are you awake?
All right. Okay. Well, thanks for asking me the question. I remember what you asked me. Okay. So, there's many pivotal moments for me, AP, but it starts off actually, it's been over 20 years in my career. But back when I was at my very impressionable years at a company called WebEx, and I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do something. I was tapped to go and run this big telephony platform that integrated with WebEx. And the only reason I feel I got that opportunity was because someone saw something in me and asked me to take that role on and a stretch assignment to go do that I didn't even think I could do myself. So it started for me very early in my career where I had someone who sponsored me, championed me, took me under his wings, if you will. And fortunately, he helped grow my career throughout the 7 years I was at WebEx. And I've had a couple of other pivotal moments, but that's when I realized, aha, somebody who believes in me, wants me to take on new things. That is awesome. I fostered that relationship and I realized that was a moment that I had a sponsor. I didn't even know what that's called at the time. And so for me, that was one of the biggest times I'd say that started. And fortunately for me, it was early part of my career. And then since then, I've had a few other really good sponsors of people who believed in me, championing me on the things that I could do or the things that I was doing. And it really helped shape who I am today, and in the role that I am today would not be the case had it not been for these sponsors throughout my career that were pivotal.
Yeah, I appreciate that story. I can resonate as well. I always share, like, the only job I've ever applied for was Hollywood Video. Every other job, Kate came to me, and it was a sponsor, it was a mentor that saw something in me.
Yeah.
And push you to stretch as well. So appreciate that lesson and that story. Ma'am, I'm going to go to you as well. So just give me an example of a challenge you faced in your career and how a sponsor or mentor have helped you overcome that challenge.
Yeah, so almost about 6 or 7 years ago, I finished a 2-year rotation in our national office at Deloitte. And at that time, when I was coming back out into the practice office, all of the partners that I had previously worked for had retired. So I came out back into practice and, I was a senior manager at the time. So certainly thinking about the next step, the next promotion, right, to partner. And you come and you look, your sponsors they're all gone. That really made me take a hard look at my list of mentors at the moment. And that's where I tapped into that group to say, hey, I'm thinking about the next step. In fact, should I even be thinking about the next step, right? You don't go into accounting thinking you're going to be a partner at Deloitte from day one. I wasn't sure if I was ready for that next step. And I actually had a mentor who became a sponsor in my promotion to say, why wouldn't you put yourself in a position to be a partner at Deloitte, right? They actually pivoted, helped me navigate at that point in time, transfer into a completely new practice. And I've spent 6 years in that practice, and that practice was actually where I was promoted to a partner in that time. So again, just relationship morphing from mentorship into sponsorship. That one I feel like maybe isn't necessarily a challenge, but certainly sort of a moment you have to deliberately or intentionally think about.
And I mean, along those lines, right? We all face challenges. How do you, what advice would you give to individuals that are kind of facing those challenges and tapping in those resources?
Yeah. So like what I was talking about, right? Like I had a set group of partners who are more senior, who I felt like were very clearly my sponsors. And without realizing that my group of mentors as well could actually transform into, in fact, these pivotal sponsors that put me through the partnership process, right? It's kind of, I think, expanding your view and also being really patient. Some of those mentor relationships that maybe you discount it and say, hey, they're not going to be my sponsors, or I don't see them as my sponsors, but really that's where they really grow into, and where I was a little bit surprised by, we're able to grow into very effective and very relevant sponsorships that, again, even present opportunities that I still have today, right, to work on stretch assignments.
If I can add to that, May and AP, like one of the things, I talked when you asked me initially, and May's talked about, is when you have really good sponsors and you thrive. there's also scenarios where you don't have really good sponsors or someone who's not sponsoring you. And then you're like, you have a low morale, you don't have confidence in yourself, you're not motivated, and then you disengage and then maybe you go somewhere else or something like that happens to you. That also has happened to me. And so I think it's not only important to like know when you have a good sponsor or someone who's actually believing in you, but also knowing like if you don't have that sponsorship, that can also be detrimental, right? And so one of the things that I've also done now in my role and the positions that I've been in is I listen to some of these other growing and up and coming individual contributors or in management about what matters to them. And oftentimes, some of the common things that I hear is that they feel invisible or not heard, or they're getting passed up for something because they're not being recognized for the things or the potential and getting that awesome sponsor or champion that believes in them. And so I'm trying to do my best to figure out how I can tap into that and help from an engagement perspective, because it's also, if you think about, okay, you have great sponsors and we're very lucky that we did. Yeah. What about if you don't? Like, what does that mean? And how do you handle that situation? And so that's the thing that I'm trying to help with. And some of these others who are experiencing that they don't get that. We're not as fortunate as we have been where we've gotten that great sponsorship.
I mean, and we're talking about sponsors and mentors as well. And again, as I think about like mentors, right? They're the sounding board. They're the ones that talk to us for advice. And then as I kind of pivot over to sponsors, these are the individuals that talk about us when we're not in the room. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, I mean, how do you think about mentors? And I'll stay with you, Jay. But how do you think about mentors versus kind of sponsors and the relationships you've built?
Yeah. So, and fortunately, I'm able to do both in the things that I've been involved with, where I mentor. I have mentoring circles that I mentor, and they, we talk about certain things about how to have certain uncomfortable conversations, and I provide, well, here's some of the experiences that I've had, or others will share some of that, and we give advice, that kind of type dialogue and conversation. Whereas in a sponsorship scenario, and frankly, I've been fortunate, even at Oracle, I've been here 3.5 years now, I found, and just examples, 2 really amazing, talented people who were buried somewhere in the organization that I found, and I call them gems, that I don't know how they haven't been utilized. And when I see them, I'm like, oh my goodness, you're capable, you're doing these great things. I'm going to put a stretch assignment. I'm going to sponsor you to go do this thing, put you under my wings and see how you can go and thrive and do things. And so I've been able to find a couple of the gems that I call who are able now to thrive, and they're in much higher positions, taking on much bigger roles. And so I'm talking about them on their behalf when they're not even. So that's how I kind of separate the two. But I think both types are very important throughout everyone's career, frankly.
Yeah.
What about you, May?
Yeah, I would say, like, if I'm a very analytical thinker, so I almost view like a mentorship as the start of the relationship. Mentorship to me is where it's, I'm sharing my knowledge or they're sharing their knowledge with me. And it's really sort of advice-based, right? Whereas it transforms into mentorship is when I share my political capital that I built, the goodwill that I have built with leadership or elsewhere in the organization, and I share that on your behalf. So I am putting part of my own brand and reputation sort of on the line in front of leadership on your behalf. And I would view them differently, such that I almost think you have to spend time as a mentor relationship. And then from that pool, it transforms over time when you've built up sort of that reciprocal trust, that mutual symbiotic relationship, and then that trust then allows it to transform into a sponsorship. Like it's like they're almost like phase 1 versus phase 2 is how I view the two of them.
Yeah, and I would totally agree with that, right? Like, I think mentorships evolve sponsorships, but not necessarily the other way around.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And so again, it sounds like sponsors and mentors have had a dramatic impact on the both of your roles. How do you identify, and I'll stay with you, May.
Yeah.
How do you identify a sponsor or a mentor, or like qualities do you look for? And then leading up to, like, once you identify one,
yeah, how do you do it?
How do you make it impactful? How do you, kind of build off of that to make sure you're driving the most beneficial relationship for the both of you?
I think actually this would be really good to hear from the 3 of us, because I bet you were going to have really different perspectives. The way that I viewed like sponsors has always been someone that I could also almost see qualities where I would want to take on, right? Whether they're a leader, a great speaker. And it also changes over time. I think this is one thing that I've learned sort of looking back, like your vision of what, what a sponsor is, or even what a mentor is, changes as you progress in your career. What is important at one point in your career, right, early stage, is not the same as someone that's mid-career versus someone who's right executive level. So I start with, right, what are the characteristics that they exhibit that I would want to be more around, or I want to learn more about? And then to actually affect that into a sponsorship, you have to be really patient. I think maybe there are instances where you can go up to someone and say, hey, would you be my sponsor? Personally, I've never done that. I don't know how I would feel if someone came up to me and said that. I don't know if that works, but it's sort of putting in time and being patient and say, hey, I'm going to start with this relationship. We're going to get to know each other. Is there chemistry? Meaning, can you be your authentic selves with that person? And in a way, the mentorship is a very sort of easy first way to build that reciprocation between the two of you. And then it almost naturally progresses into sponsorship. It's not at any point where I said, okay, like Trisha is one of my main sponsors. You are my mentor. And now at this moment, you are my sponsor. It just became where she's seen my work product. We spent out of my 20 years of my career, she started when, like, I started with her when I was a first year. So that's a 20-year relationship. And I would say that transformed into a sponsorship really in the last 6 or 7 years. So what is that? 13 years of investment. And then it became a sponsorship in the last 6 or 7 years. So I guess a really long way of saying it's a little bit of organic. It's a little bit of effort that you put in identifying them, but you almost have to also be patient over the course of time to transform that into a very effective sponsorship.
Yeah, and let me just, I want to unpack a little bit more. Like, how do you make it effective, right? Is it the discipline around regular scheduled meetings?
Yeah.
Is it agenda driven? Like, how do you make it effective?
Yeah. So to be like very practical, I take on assignments where I can shine in front of them, right? So when I talk about this reciprocity in the relationship, part of that is, right, for them to put their political capital, on your behalf, they have to trust you and have, the easiest way is to see the work product, or, right, something that you have in common that they have seen or benefited from, right? And so they can then effectively go in front of leadership to say, I have seen May do this work. She is ready to be a partner. I am willing to go to bat for her. And because I have seen this over the course of 6 or 7 years. So I've deliberately picked assignments with this person where it's possible. Obviously, right, can't always navigate that piece, but to me, that was a very intentional action on my behalf.
And so, Jill, kind of stick with the same questions, right? You were talking about identifying gems, and how do the gems identify you?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So I did have someone who came up to me and formally said, will you be my mentor? Right, kind of thing. I'm like, all right, great, cool. All right. So
I'll know I have made it when someone asks. Inspiration here.
Okay, sure. So then I'm like, all right, well, let's schedule some time. Let's have a discussion. We get together and she's like, I don't know what to do. What should I do? And I'm like, I don't know what you should do. Like, what do you want to do? Like, I don't have to answer all the answers, right? And I think that's the other thing. It's so it's funny you mentioned that, May, in your scenario, but for me too, it's worked more organically in kind of creating that, but it takes a lot of guts for someone to say, hey, will you be my sponsor? Or hey, will you mentor me? Or hey, will you? So the fact that the person reached out is great, but also it is a reciprocated type of relationship. So you've got to also make sure you come with, okay, it's organic, but it's like, what would you like to do? What help do you need? Like, what are the challenges you're dealing with? Versus like, what should I do when I grow up? I'm not sure. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I don't know so trying to help, navigate through those things. But I'd say a lot of it is, sometimes, for me, personally, I feel I never had to ask someone to be a sponsor or a mentor, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't go ask someone to be your mentor or sponsor, because if you don't, and someone doesn't recognize you, then what? So I do want to encourage that. But culturally for me, it's always been, be humble. You don't need to go ask for stuff, kind of thing. But sometimes you do need to ask for stuff. And the toughest thing for me was to ask for stuff for myself. I could always talk about everybody else and everyone else's behalf and stick up for them or whatever needs for them that they need. But when it came to myself, it was always a struggle for me to even talk about, like, what do I want? What do I need? What are the things that, I want to bring up that matter to me? So it does take guts, but once you do that and you form that, trying to build that relationship and that trust, and then once it evolves, then you can go in and ask for, like, hey, there's this opportunity. I want to take this next level. Do you think that I'm ready for? Can you help me? What will it take for me to get there? Then you can start having, those type of conversations. But it requires you to feel comfortable feeling uncomfortable doing that, right? Because sometimes people just don't recognize you for your merits, and then, take you and then promote you or whatever the next thing is. So I'd say that that's a big thing. And then the other thing is, when I do form a relationship, whether it's a mentoring circle or a formal sponsorship or more of a casual one, I do make the time and the commitment. Yeah. And I ask the same for the others. Like, we make the time and the commitment when we do. We all have day jobs and we're all very busy, but when I make the commitment, I'm focused on you. You're focused on this conversation, and that's what my ask is.
And so what does that look like, right? Is it a commitment of meeting once a quarter? I mean, it might depend on who you're sponsoring, mentoring.
Yeah. So
what's the discipline around that?
Yep. I try to make it where it's once every 2 months. And I'd say it's for a year, sometimes 2 years, depending on the level and the track and what we're doing. Previously, when I was a different company, we did it for 2 years. Here, just based on the kind of turn and trying to get as many as I can and do it meaningfully, I try to do it within a year. And then that's formally. But then we still keep in, anytime you need the time, I'll make the time. So that's kind of the way the relationship works. We formalize it for the first year and then informal after.
Love it.
But usually about once every 2 months.
Okay. And so clearly you have a lot of fans. And so assuming a lot of folks come to you and ask for your sponsorship or mentorship, like, what are the qualities you would look for to actually say yay or nay to someone? If you had 5 people come up to you and you can only choose one because maybe timing commitments or
yes.
What qualities do you look for?
So a big part, and Wynn, who was here, yeah, she's here. So a big part of the things that I try and do is I actually try and solicit through partnership with HR, through partnership with different ERGs within the organization. So while I'm here for Ascend and through Opal and the Asian community, I also am heavily involved from a women in tech perspective. I also get involved with our open ERGs from an LGBTQ and various other ERGs that I'm a part of and try to participate. I actually reach out to the various ERGs. I reach out to the senior executives and say, hey, is there someone that's up and coming that you think needs a mentor? So I go through the process first, get some details on their bio. So I do some homework in advance before then we create that, hey, we want you to be part of this relationship. Or if they come to me, then I'll be like, okay, I'll go do back channel referencing on them. I will go and check with their management and kind of where they are, what they've been involved with, first, just get a sense in myself to understand and get some information before then I say yes or no. Does that make sense? So that's kind of part of what I do.
I mean, I love how intentional you are. And I think it's a good reminder that oftentimes when we're seeking mentorship or sponsorship, we almost seem like it's one-sided. Like, I'm going to come to you for advice, but no, it's a commitment on both sides as well. And that's something that to think about as well as you think about those relationships. I kind of want to shift, and I'll kind of start with you, May. And what strategies do you recommend for individuals that are seeking maybe specific sponsors in their industry?
Yeah. So I would say first take a look at your own circle. Like I guess I keep coming back to this idea of mentors. I think a lot of our companies are really good at setting up formal relationships. I would lean into those, right? You have that provides you with a mechanism to access someone that you maybe otherwise, wouldn't naturally work with. So I would first lean into that. I would also look to your other sponsors, like when Jay was talking about, hey, how do you identify sponsors that you sort of vibe with or that you would say yes to? A lot of times it's actually through fellow partners that recommend maybe one of their mentees over to me. And because I know that relationship with that fellow partner, it almost gives them instant credibility on, right? Like if they're recommending their top performer or one of their mentees to me, I almost give that more impact, right, than someone that I'm sort of just meeting randomly. So I would lean into your network to say, hey, I've seen someone, I've met someone, I want to learn more about them to figure out whether or not they're a sponsor. Lean into your existing network, your existing mentorship, and say, hey, are you willing to make an introduction to, to this person so that I can learn more. And again, right, be patient, right? That first meeting, may or may not work out, right? That there's nothing personal against you, right? Whether the ability for us to take on, a sponsor or even, right, or mentor, right, is at a point in time, right? It could be, we don't have capacity because of existing obligations, or, we're at bandwidth or something like that, right? There's nothing personal against you. You can also come back again, right, at a later point in time and revisit that relationship. So again, I would lean into your network once you've identified someone, right, and ask them to make an introduction. I feel like that's probably what's worked out best for me.
Yeah, and Joe, I mean, I go to you with the same question as well. Again, how do individuals find the sponsors, mentors within their industry?
Yeah, and I feel like even, when I think I'm still learning myself. And so I still tap into like the mentors that I have who were my mentors from 20 years ago. And I'm able to keep those relationships and that connection to get advice on things. So I feel like a good way there for me personally is in some of the relationships I have. But I like what May is saying is, tap into the kind of areas that you're in and who could you go to. Maybe even ask a colleague of yours, hey, do you know anyone that could help me with such and such, if not themselves? And so oftentimes, through, for example, Wynn, who runs involved in various different ERGs within Oracle, they go to her and ask her, hey, I'm looking for a mentor and then she's tapped into me and say, hey, Jay, so-and-so's looking. And so there's different ways by which you can go, but that was one big one where I got my first cohort of mentees, is asking through your ERGs or asking through your peer groups. And for us, because we're a big technology company, a lot of it's like, okay, they're either product background or they want to know what does it take to become more technical, or they want to be in something completely different. And so just trying to figure out, what their interests are, and then try to map. If I don't know someone, I'm like, oh, you know what? I have a colleague who knows that area best. I'll refer you over to that colleague. I can't do that part justice, and I'll refer to a colleague. So I think that networking is a really important thing to have.
Yeah. And I'm assuming ERG, Employee Resource Group.
Sorry, yes.
And then the same thing. And we at JP Morgan, we call it BRG, Business Resource Group as well.
Gotcha.
And again, a great place to find like-minded individuals with similar passions that can align you with those those mentorships. But what does that look like at Deloitte? Is there an ERG or BRG at Deloitte?
Yeah. So at a Deloitte, or I'm sure at a lot of these large organizations, we actually have formal mentor programs. So for example, I'm assigned 6 mentors. Then on top of that, we also have various different programs. Like there's a power of choice one where I'm assigned additional mentors, based on really sort of industry alignment, but also I think our group does a really good job of interviewing the mentees who participate in this program on what they're looking for, and then they match them with the sponsor. So I also have 3 through that. So again, sort of this like bandwidth, right? Just through a formal program, there's already, what is that, 6 or 10 through a formal program. And then a lot of times too, we also have these BRGs where I'm meeting really passionate individuals. Again, this, an organization like Ascend, I am here because I am passionate about the cause. So you showing up here already means we have something similar, and I can sense the passion, right? As you guys are listening, nodding, asking questions, there's a commonality where, I'm very interested in what you are passionate about, what you want to learn about. So I feel like I also get mentees here. Again, same, we have Asians and allies, same thing. I've met like Roman, for example, I met him through that effort. We have a couple of other Deloitte people that, I also mentor through that organization as well. And then just like working on different teams, like at any given point in time, I have 6 different teams in the field. There's someone in there that I'm vibing with. And so there's also mentors that come out of that relationship, and those teams change over, every 2 or 3 years. So I would say there's a lot of different avenues through where mentorship comes through, or sponsorships.
Yep. I can agree more there. I'm probably stick with you, May.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about paying it forward.
Yeah.
Leaders that have grown in their careers because of sponsors and mentors, the fulfillment you get from actually sponsoring and mentoring, and Jay, you're talking about that. So, May, if you could share a story of a success story of someone you sponsored or mentored, what did that look like?
Yeah. So I have a new senior. I've worked with her for 2 years now, so basically 2/3 of her career, because she's only She's only in her third year. She's a more, you know, a relatively more quiet individual, but I've gotten to know her in the 2 years where I just think she's really good at what she does. And she's very thoughtful. You know, but because she's really quiet, she doesn't really speak up at different meetings, or she doesn't really speak up or raise her hand, or, you know, leadership doesn't automatically think about her for a stretch assignment. So I actually volunteered her. We want, you know, I want a really big project, an IPO transaction in this market. I actually asked leadership to put her onto this project. She's very young for this project, but I want her to be in that position for this transaction, right? And, you know, actually speak about her and give her the opportunity to excel as the senior of this transaction. And this is where I think it's a symbiotic relationship, meaning while I'm giving her the stretch assignment, I also have a very clear understanding of where her strengths are because I've spent 2 years working with her. So it's very easy for me to go to leadership and say, hey, I'm willing to put her on this project. She's very young for this project, but let's put her on that. I'm willing to lean in to work with her on this. At the same time, she's also taught me a lot because she's a little bit younger. The questions that she asked me has really made me sort of reflect on how I run this type of engagement. And so I feel like I've also learned a lot from just the past, you know, 6 months that we've been working on this project. So I would say that one's a really good one. Just she wouldn't be on the stretch assignment. You know, perhaps she would be, but right, it was a very intentional act to place her onto this project and right elevate her name in front of leadership.
That resonates with me a ton. I consider myself an introvert, and
Yep.
you know, and it's how do you stand out when you don't necessarily speak up, right? And I always say, right, like don't watch how my mouth moves, watch how my feet move, right? Like you'll see it in my actions as well. But you know, along those lines, like you've identified someone that maybe was soft spoken or didn't have the courage to speak up. Like how do you what advice would you give to someone that also maybe relate to being an introvert or doesn't have that courage to go out and seek a sponsor?
Yeah, I would say especially for your earlier stage and mid stage, like the work that you do will resonate. Like it will stand out. You executing well, or I'm not saying that you shouldn't amplify, but I wouldn't discount the level of effort or the quality of the work that you do. It's very much right. See where my feet are going, right? She didn't necessarily speak up at every single one of these meetings, but I can tell that every project or work stream that I worked on with her, she was very thorough in the work that she did, in the questions that she did ask me in a smaller group setting. It stood out to me. And so again, I think that is one way that it's worked out.
Yeah, and then I think of the body of work, right? And the importance of highlighting that, but also the importance of like writing on the side, and I call it merit badges, like write on the side all the extracurriculars and such, because that might come up in an annual review, or that might come up as you're thinking about kind of developing that sponsor and mentor relationship. Jay, I'll go to you with the same question. In terms of paying it forward and maybe a success story of someone you sponsored or mentored. Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, I'm truly passionate about this space because I genuinely believe if I did not have sponsors or the mentors throughout my career, there's no way I would be where I am today. So and I can tell, May, with other conversations and AP that we've had, that it's like, it means a lot. And so when Wynn's like, you're going to talk on this topic, I'm like, oh my gosh, great, because I can talk forever on this because I really do believe that is important. I have a few, stories, but I think the thing I want to leave with you all when I think through this is, when I didn't think I could do certain things until this person believed in me to be able to do the things, right? So that is like in itself was amazing experience. And so for me, that's what I look for. Someone who doesn't think, and you see them, they're doing the hard work, they're doing the things with their feet, sometimes with their, their voices, but giving them that opportunity to continue to thrive on the things that they were never given the opportunity to do. Seeing that, I think in itself. So the thing I want to leave with you is like, if someone sees that you have that, embrace that. Build that relationship that you have. If someone doesn't see you, figure out how to get that relationship, because I truly believe having a sponsor or mentor that does believe in you and sees the things that you're capable, not even you think you're capable of doing, That is what continues to help you grow and thrive. And frankly, it's not that everyone wants to become the CEO of a company or whatever. It may be like the best you can be, which is whatever that is. But that whatever that is, I feel if you don't have somebody who's like they're mature enough to give you that guidance, then sometimes it's harder to do it on your own. So for me, that's the biggest thing that I'd say. Like and so I try to do that AP with people that I work with. That if I see that, or I try to share that and spread it to get the kind of multiplying factor with like, hey, I'm mentoring you, but I expect when we're done, you're going to mentor others, or hey, I'm sponsoring you, and I expect you. This is what I want you to look for to sponsor others. Like spreading that to me is what's going to help versus me just trying to do it all by myself, or you guys trying to do it all by yourselves. So that's the thing for me that I'd say, really, it is what I would like to try and do, and what I'm trying to do with all my peers. I'm trying to get them into a sponsorship program, what it is to be even a sponsor. Some people don't even know what that means. They don't even know what to look for.
There's no formal training.
There's no formal training for that kind of thing. There's some toolkits and things you can look for and try and help. That's the thing I'm passionate about. I want to try and be able to get more sponsors out there, and I want to try and get more proteges, we call them, or mentees out there to embrace that and create that relationship. Because I truly believe the more we can do that, the more we can get people to continue to do better than they thought they could even do themselves.
So along those lines, right, we talk a lot about balance, right? Whether that's work-life balance, which I hate the word balance in general. I think it's not about balance and keeping score, but it's more about harmony. And you may be spending more time in work and maybe more time in the personal life from time to time. But like, Jay, I'll kind of stay with you, but how do you manage your responsibilities from the work perspective and your those responsibilities coupled with the extra adage of supporting and mentoring and sponsoring others? Like, how do you find that harmony?
I think it's great because I have a great support system. Having that support system from work support system and my family support system really helps make it all a thing. And it's not, I have to make a choice kind of thing. So my husband will be very proud when I say this, but he is my number one fan. And he is extremely supportive of the involvement I have, the career development that I've had. And then so therefore, as a result, my kids are very interested and excited. They're like, "Good luck, Mom, today. Good luck." But so I've got a little fan club with my family. They're very supportive, but because that they're supportive of the things that I'm able to do, whether it's being that I'm an Asian, or being that I'm a female, or being that I'm just who I am, is what enables me to be able to make the commitments, whether it be something like this or a work trip that I have to take or whatnot. And so for me, the big part foundationally is having a good support system, a solid support system that enables me to do these things.
I'm going to turn the question on you, AP, because you have little ones. How do you keep harmony?
Yeah.
No balance. Don't use the word balance.
Yeah. The way I keep harmony is I debrief with my wife every night. My son just started kindergarten. I mean, my son just started kindergarten, and who would have thought, like how much you have to know about. I went into it, just kindergarten, no, but it's a public school system and PTA, the outcome. And so having that strong support system, I think is critical, but knowing when you have to point your attention in certain places as well. And then, as much as I'm like you, like I want to pour a lot into those sponsors and mentor relationships as well. And so only take those on that you can actually equally
be effective.
Be effective. So, but I'm still going to go to you on that.
Okay. I think like when I think about both as a sponsor and a sponsee, like what Jay was talking about, like it's a two-way relationship, right? If I could see someone is pouring in their time, right, they're putting in intentional thought and intentional effort when we're meeting, once a quarter, once every 2 months, or whatever it is. It doesn't really feel like, this is going to sound really cheesy, but when you're meeting with them, it doesn't feel like you're like spending extra time, because this is something that like we've gotten to where we are because someone took a chance on us, right? So inherent in our value system is the want to like pay it forward. So when I see someone investing their time and making that effort to meet with me, as a sponsee, it's just organic. It's natural to like want to talk with them. Like this, this new senior that I talked about, it wasn't that she at any point came to me and said, "Hey, May, will you be my mentor? Or will you be my sponsee?" We talk about her career. I check in with her she puts check-ins on my calendar and say, hey, what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about the next step? Are you already thinking about making manager? What industry do you want to work on? And I put all of this together, right? What she's telling me, and I walk away with that, and I pour thought into that in a similar way that she has. So again, very cheesy answer, but like that's where the organic chemistry comes from. Yeah. And that's why, it's not like everyone, right? You don't take it personally. It's not going to work 100% of the time, right? There's just, you have, like dating, I probably shouldn't say that. Take that. Yeah, it's organic chemistry. Done.
Organic chemistry.
Yeah, organic chemistry.
I'm gonna kind of shift gears a little bit, and I'm gonna think about like diversity and think about the kind of organization, kind of the impact. And I just at JP Morgan Chase, and when I think about our annual reviews, DE&I is a component of those annual reviews as well. And so, may I also kind of stay with you, and how I'm thinking about sponsorship and mentorship. How has that created more of like an inclusive environment and promoted diversity at your firm?
Yeah, I think it's obviously it is part of our performance, but I feel like the overall culture has also changed in that I think we have a lot of allies as well. I think putting this top of mind, I think it's really pointed out some of the allies that we have, and I feel like that plays a really big role in, I would say a lot of my sponsors were, Caucasian male or Caucasian females, right? They are diverse. I would also say, me personally, I make it a deliberate effort for my teams to see diversity in my teams. At Deloitte, I think about 30-40% of every starting class is Asian. And so I like to carry that representation through to the different levels. And right, I think a lot of times they tend to be, maybe I see someone who's maybe a little bit less outspoken, right, versus another counterpart. I will look for them and say, hey, what do you want to pick up here? Do you want to work on this assignment? What do you think, right? And elevating that, I feel like that has really taught me to be really diverse in thought as well. Again, right, I think about doing things a certain way, but even from just the senior, she's made me sort of reevaluate how I coach, like fundamentally coach some of my younger staff. And I felt like it's like personally, it's actually been very rewarding on top of obviously like a performance, metric as well.
Yeah, Jay, I've got to go to that same question with you, right? I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. How has diversity coupled with sponsorship and mentorship made a dramatic impact on what you've observed at Oracle?
Yeah, fortunately, I'm able to be part of the executive DE&I committee that's actually sponsored by our CEO herself. And it's a small group of executives. And one of the first things that we did is look at the data. And not only are we a data company, we're actually looking at the data. So, and it's a lot of common themes that are not just in the tech industry, but in other tech industries, but also in other industries, financial industry, healthcare, et cetera, where the data, and there's been several reports that come in from different, like McKinsey had a big report on this, but it is looking at there's a big increase in intake of college hires, new grads that have come in from a D&I perspective, but then there's this kind of drop in the middle management, and then there's a few up at the kind of top executive, right? So it's like, what's going on when it's like a lot coming in, and then the funnel starts to get smaller and smaller, and there's this kind of like concept of the broken rung. That's an area that I'm actually really passionate about, that I see is a thing that needs focus and attention. And so one of the things that I've been doing is, for those who are in engineering, you do a lot of things at scale, but before you do that, pilot them. You try to start small, and then you figure out how you can scale it to go bigger. And so we're piloting a sponsorship protege program to see and understand and create. So how do you be a sponsor? Create the toolkits and help with that. How do you be a protege? What are the things? What are the type of conversations? And making it formalized and trying to create that. So we've been piloting this thing. And then my plan is, with the support of the D&I committee, is that we're going to make this more of a larger scale thing that we want to do. And so being able to be part of that committee and being able to, show the data and see the data, and then do something about the data, I think it's the things that we're able to do, and Oracle is doing that. So I'm really proud about the progress that's being made.
Yeah, it's exciting to hear. I know that was a fast 45 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Questions
Okay.
that I could still go on, but we really wanted to turn it to the audience as well for about 10-ish minutes to ask any question. Let's, Lindsay.
Really empowered by depth or the RG. Do you guys have any formal programs or concentrated efforts in diversity at the supplier level you work with and for your clients? Do you have any programs increasing diversity in this?
You want to, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the things, I don't know if we have necessarily formalized programs per se, but one of the things we've been doing. So, for example, when the whole scenario happened with Black Lives Matter, and we wanted to promote actually, entrepreneurs, businesses that are sponsored, led by African American from a local supply chain community from the United States domestically. We looked to see across all of our procurement what that list was and try to seek after more focused on African American community. And so that was a big thing that we looked at from a supply chain perspective that I know I personally was involved in that we looked at. I don't know if there's anything specifically formally per se, but I will tell you, because we are a business that provides products and services for businesses, actually our customers expected of us, like, hey, we're diverse. We expect the same kind of diverse, from you as being a provider ourselves. So there is this kind of symbiotic thing that there's an expectation and frankly a more responsibility, if you will, that is expected of us that we get from our customer base.
Yeah, absolutely. That so I serve on both the audit and the advisory side. In a lot of the RFPs or the requests for proposals that we get, there's actually specific criteria from our target that mention, show me how you're implementing D&I, show me your composition of your team. And that has actually formalized a program up top nationally, where for our sort of our crown accounts or our platinum accounts, the highest accounts, there's actually an annual review that looks at succession planning. So we're not just looking at, right, which prevents, really just promoting diversity at, the entry level so that your overall, the overall statistics on the team looks good. It actually looks at leadership level, the next, lead client service partner, the succession for the next client service partner at the senior manager. There's an annual review process that looks to ensure that there is a plan to keep D&I front of mind. So again, this is all at the platinum accounts, right? Because I think that's where we're seeing some of the drop off in, we might work on smaller projects right, but there's a lack of diversity really on, more of the crown jewel or the larger accounts. So that's formalized itself into a national program.
Questions?
So, Ryan Chan, Robert Half, how do you know, like kind of within my org structure, there are individuals within my same level? And I would say we would probably think we're all equal siblings, brothers and sisters. How do you know if someone is truly sponsoring you versus not sponsoring you? I think Jay, you mentioned that you thought someone would sponsor you, but they weren't really a sponsor. So kind of how do you know? And I guess, what do you do if you don't know and you're trying to find out, unfortunately?
Yeah, I think part of it is, having certain honest conversations, frankly. And one of the toughest things for me initially was getting feedback that I didn't want to hear. But guess what? If you don't listen to that feedback and you go like this and you don't want to listen to them, and like they're never going to give you the honest feedback, right? So I'd say for me it was trying to be open to the feedback and what they were trying to do, and if it came from a good place. There's going to be times when you have some people who don't believe in you. It's just going to be what it is, right?
Yep.
Fun. Right? Just because there's no time and space for negativity, right? So it's trying to understand that, knowing the difference. But if there's true, genuine feedback, you should take that feedback and do something about it. I think that's important, especially for me. It was very important to get that. But there were some cases where, yeah, you have honest conversations and they're like, yeah, I don't support the thing that you're doing and the blah, blah, blahs. And I'm like, great, I'll move on to the next advocate. We'll support that with me and we'll go do that. Or, hope that helps. I don't know, maybe you
Yeah.
have anything else.
No, I think that's right. Like I think I mentioned the concept of like being your authentic self. Part of that authenticity is being able to go to your sponsor or having your sponsor actually give you feedback that you don't want to hear. Like you are not ready for this. Like, I could be like, I'm studying for, the Oracle account. Let me like go win the Oracle account. Like, okay, Payne, you're like 20 years in, like, pump brakes there, right? So like part of that is like getting feedback from them that's not just all, yes, you're doing great. Like they're actually giving you constructive feedback. I think that's one indicator. I think another one is it's almost like they're thinking ahead for you, right? They're putting you in opportunities that you weren't even aware is happening. Like I didn't even know to ask for the industry that I ultimately got promoted in. That wasn't even on my radar. I had never worked on it. I didn't think, shouldn't say this out loud, but I didn't think much of it. But they like that's where they said, no, May, like here's the path that I think we're gonna paint for you here. This is the time horizon. So again, they're like giving you opportunities that you didn't even know. And they're almost looking forward ahead for you. And again, I think sometimes you're gonna realize like who you thought was a sponsor isn't, maybe they're not in the right time and place to be that sponsor at that moment. It's definitely trial and error. But yeah. Those two things.
And I'll just add to that as well. I mean, sometimes they may not believe in you, or other times they may not know you.
Yeah.
As well. I
Yeah.
recently got promoted to an MD, and it was very a formal process where you have to identify kind of sponsors that are going to speak on your behalf to a committee for 90 seconds about you, and then it's a yay or nay. And I've only been with for a little less than 4 years. So I consider myself a pandemic baby. So as I was going out and seeking, heads of businesses, some of them declined to sponsor me because they're like, well, I know AP's body of work, but I've never even met him.
Yeah.
I've only seen him.
Yep.
So again, sometimes it's timing, but sometimes they just may not know you, which is, a reason why to kind of qualify that as a sponsorship.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thought there might have been.
Yeah. So, Lisa Diaz from Robert Half as well. Thank you very much for all of experiences and approach that you shared. As I was listening, I definitely heard a theme of intentionality, being intentional and being looking out to your networks, leveraging your mentors, leveraging your sponsors. So thinking about that and thinking about, again, for some of our, maybe whether you're new, you're young, you're coming into the organization, or you maybe are not as assertive, or you've got your Asian culture so deeply embedded to say, hey, just work hard, you're going to be recognized. What advice do you have for, again, younger generation or people who are maybe young in their careers to be intentional, or what's the approach that you would recommend to start becoming more intentional about the career? Because usually for Asians, it's more about that, like waiting, versus I think for you, it definitely seems like not only your partnerships, but your intentionality has gotten you to kind of like our.
Yeah, I mean, a really easy one that I think I sort of touched on is lean into the programs that your office has. Like, I feel like, sometimes like people don't take advantage of that, but to have that already, like that's something that you can take advantage of. It may or may not work out, but that's already something set up for you. It's almost like no effort on your half, right? Like you just need to send them an email, put 30 minutes on their calendar. If you can't even take the time to do that, like I don't know if, to sound harsh, but are you ready for a mentorship or a sponsorship, right? But I would like, I feel like people underestimate that piece. So that is one.
Yeah, I mean, add to that, just intention has to marry action as well. And so either you have that voice, or again, your body of work, and someone who's able to observe that has that voice for you. Good, might have seen it.
Yeah, I was like, we're dating. I planted it too soon. I shouldn't have done that. Organic chemistry. Okay. Like, oh my God. Mhm.
Well, very, very. But we no longer work.
Yeah, so well, if she's not in your line of thing and you need her to help you with the thing, that might not work. But as far as like, keeping that relationship for like future opportunities or things like that, doesn't always have to be in the line of work where you create that relationship. Like for me, some of my not boyfriends, but
No.
mine, I keep in touch through like, well, so I'm actually doing a dinner, and this is the same two actually that I had from when I was at WebEx 23 years ago. And we go and have dinner. So I'm going to have dinner with them in October. We scheduled it. We have to
Yeah.
schedule,
Yep.
make that plan, but we scheduled a dinner to go get together. So I still tap into that relationship of asking them about things and advice for stuff. And they ask me about what's it like to do the blah, blah, blah. So I'd say like that part. But in your situation where you might have had somebody in your line of work that knew your work and then sponsored you, and that person's not there anymore, then you've got to look to see, can you find another sponsor within your kind of line of work, right? So you can still keep that relationship, obviously, but there's, another thing for you to maybe think through it. You might need to have somebody else who is in that line of work that can work with you, that sees the things you're doing and be able to talk about you on your behalf.
Yeah. This situation is actually something I'm dealing with right now. So a more senior partner, she took on a national role. She took over national growth strategy at Deloitte. I worked with her when I was a second year. So that was, I don't know, 17, 18 years ago. And she actually recently came back into the office. And so I worked with her as a first and second year. So we were, direct work. When she came back, I just reached out and I said, hey, Ellen, like, hey, welcome back to the Bay. I would love to just catch up with you. And we have quarterly lunches. We don't work together. I serve in a completely different industry that she does. But I view her more, I think you have to sort of manage your expectation on that relationship. Whereas before they might have been a sponsor because of your relationship, because you are now both in different positions, I think you almost have to look at it differently. I don't know if you can expect to say, hey, this person is going to be my number one sponsor again, because inherently you're both different. And so like, this is how you heard, I'm just keeping her up to date on, she's new, she hasn't been in the Bay Area for a while. I go to her and say, okay, what would a senior partner want to know when they're re-entering into a marketplace that they have left for a while ago, right? So whenever we talk, I'm like, hey, I'm giving you an update. The IPO market is coming back up. I just wanted to let you know we're seeing a strong pipeline of reverse mergers, right? Like just sharing information and trying to build that sort of that reciprocal relationship again. And I know fully well that will take time. It is not right now. I met with her twice and she's going to be my sponsor again. I know it will take time to transform that relationship, even though we had known each other right back at the beginning of my career.
Oh, yeah, Ruby, up. One last question.
My name is Thank you so much for together. Well, yeah, I really appreciated that you kind of picked that project where you can find. I recently came across something like that in my career, and the challenge was companies they know that I'm accountable, so they put me on 70% of all projects. So my time is very spread thin, and this one gives a lot of time. So I fortunately have to let it go. And this is something I communicate with the leadership a lot, is that when they spread me so thin, the amount of attention I can give is very limited. But at the same time, they are not hiring more people or giving less projects. What's your advice?
Do you feel like you've disappointed your sponsor? Is that the problem? Or it's like a more of a project management, like delivery and execution type?
I feel like I'm not set for success.
This is where I tell some of this is where a sponsor plays a very key role in my mind, where they can say no on my behalf. Like Right, because usually when you're talking about project assignment and you're assigned on one, the decisions are made at a level that is above you. So having a sponsor, and this is where Ryan's question on when you know you have a sponsor, they're willing to say no on your behalf. It's easier for them because it's usually a decision maker to decision maker. If you're staffed on a project, you're probably a junior to that level. So if this is the time, I would say to lean into a mentor or a sponsor and say, hey, this is what's happening. I'm a little bit worried about how this is going to affect my feedback. What is there something that I should be doing differently, right? And then, as a sponsor, like I have in times inserted myself, not all the time, right? Because you need to learn how to manage your own time too. But where I realize like the conversation is above that person and I'm willing to walk into that, expend my political capital to say, hey, we got to get her, we got to change this situation. So not directly related to your question, but like tying together, like that's where an effective use of sponsor comes in. And I have seen that work on my behalf.
Well, I know we're at time,
We're told
so
present. Oh,
thank you
okay,
both.
sorry.
That was,
No.
that was nice.
Yes, thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you to AT, Jay, and May. Learned a lot myself, and I actually reconnected with an ex 20 years
Oh my
ago.
God.
Recently, but reconnecting is basically a board of directors, right? The mentors and sponsors you have are board of directors, so you go to different people for different things. Really want to do a quick shout out. Larry Lowe still here? Larry. Larry is our national fan. Great panel, and we have our online viewers too, so thank you for taking the time to join us today. Really, again, really appreciate you. I think there's more to come. There's still a couple months left in the year. We have a great event on November 3rd with our co-host Visa at their office in Foster City down the street. Host our second and final Aspire Cross Generation. It's a half-day event with a plenary, 2 breakout sessions with basically concurrent sessions you can choose from, along with happy hour. Who doesn't love food? So thank you all for joining us. Make sure you sign up for our newsletter and just stay in touch. Take the next hour to network and meet others that are here today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, yeah, we got.
You guys-
Oh,